316 Reviews had a bit of a longer break than I expected, but today we are finally back, and at the Twitch Points requested stale, we are going to look at Chicken Run, released in the year 2000. So Chicken Run is an animated adventure comedy film produced by British-French studio PAF in association with Aardman Animations and DreamWorks Animation. Aardman Animations have been around since 1972, producing things such as Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep, and Morph, but this was their film debut. The film tells a tale of some chickens who live on a farm and are trying to get out unsuccessfully to avoid being killed. Their prayers appear to be answered, however, when an American rooster named Rocky comes out of nowhere, apparently with the ability to fly. They're relying on Rocky to get them off the farm, but unfortunately, he may not be all that he seems. The voice cast in this movie include Julia Sawalha, Miranda Richardson, Tony Haygarth, Benjamin Whitrow, Timothy Spall, Phil Daniels, and Lynn Ferguson. Unfortunately, the voice cast also includes Mel Gibson, back when he was actually getting work. This film had a budget of in between 42 and 45 million and made back 227.8 million at the box office. That makes this film, still to this day, the highest grossing stop-motion animation film of all time. Not only that, but it's the only stop-motion animation film to ever exceed $200 million at the box office. Unsurprisingly, second on that list was Aardman's second feature film, Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which was just 3 million short of getting to 200 million. In fact, only 9 films all time have succeeded $100 million at the box office, the other ones being Coraline, The Pirates and Adventure with Scientists, Corpse Bride, The Box Trolls, Papa Norman, Shaun the Sheep the Movie, and The Nightmare Before Christmas. And 23 years after release, just last year, this film actually got a sequel, Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget. It would have been interesting to see where that film would have placed on the list of highest grossing stop animation films, but it didn't place at all, as it was released exclusive on Netflix. Today we're talking about the first film, and were the chickens able to get off the farm? We're gonna find out right now as we look at Chicken Run, released in the year 2000. So our film begins in Yorkshire, England, on Tweedy's farm, which looks a lot like a prison camp. That's because it basically is for the chickens who live there, who are trying desperately to escape. Their leader is a chicken named Ginger, who one night attempts to get out before she's chased by Mr. Tweedy's dogs. She's inadvertently saved by Mrs. Tweedy, although Mrs. Tweedy is much crueler than her husband. Over the course of the start of the movie, we see multiple of the chickens' escape attempts, all which are foiled, usually because of the screw-ups of the other chickens, not so much Ginger. On one morning, they begin their roll call, which is organized by the lone older rooster named Fowler. Mrs. Tweedy inspects their egg production, but finds that one of the chickens, named Edwina, has not laid any eggs. As a result, Mrs. Tweedy takes her into a barn and chops her head off, much to the horror of Ginger and the other chickens. Ginger then plans to make a launching device and enlists the help of 2 rats named Nick and Fletcher, who are traders. She tries to pay them in seed, but they want eggs or nothing. She can't give them that, however, because they need the eggs to avoid being killed. We then get some insight into the relationship of the Tweedies. Mr. Tweedy is obsessed with the chickens, thinking they're trying to escape, and he's right, but Mrs. Tweedy just thinks he's an idiot. He's also scared to death of her and extremely submissive, so she calls the shots. She's also sick of being poor and making minimal profit from the eggs, but she sees something in a magazine that may turn around their fortunes. That night, Ginger tries to present her new plan to the other hens, but they're getting sick of trying to escape and becoming content with their lives. Ginger is beginning to lose hope as well, until she sees a rooster flying out of nowhere. Distracted by her, the rooster ends up hitting a weather vane and landing right in the farm. He stuck the landing too, unfortunately the food trowel stuck right onto him. His poster then flies right into Ginger's hand, which reveals that he's a flying rooster. They quickly hide him, as Ginger believes him to be the answer to all their problems. Once he wakes up, he's revealed to be named Rocky, an arrogant American rooster. All the hens are eager to learn from him, but Rocky's not so keen, as he's trying to leave despite his wing being screwed up. However, a circus truck then pulls up, revealing that Rocky indeed works for the circus. He doesn't want to go back, so him and Ginger make a deal. They'll hide him as long as he teaches them how to fly. Over the next few days, they go for flying training, which goes incredibly not well, much to the disappointment of Ginger, and much to the delight of the 2 rats. One night after a very disappointing day of training, another big truck pulls up and they believe it to be from the circus. It, however, is not from the circus, but a giant machine, which Mrs. Tweedy instructs her husband to put together. Ginger then confronts Rocky about why they haven't been able to fly yet, and he says it's simple, they need more velocity. In order to get that, he purchases an elastic band from the rats to help them get more velocity. And well, it succeeds in that. It doesn't get them much height though, unfortunately. It's then time for roll call, and one of the chickens named Babs is terrified because she realizes she hasn't laid any eggs. And sure enough, Mrs. Tweedy kneels down and measures her. That's interesting. Turns out she doesn't want the eggs anymore. She wants all the chickens to be just as fat as Babs is, and doubles their feed. Ginger's the only one who realizes this and flips over to feed Trow. Rocky tries to get her to lighten up and lie to the other chickens more, which she doesn't appreciate, and they both get in a big argument and storm off from each other. Rocky then sees that all the other chickens are pretty depressed, however, so he comes up with a plan to boost morale. That plan is in the form of buying a radio from the rats and hosting a big old dance party. The dance party concludes, however, when it's heard that Mr. Tweedy has finally finished building that big machine. So what is it exactly? It's a chicken pie machine. And Mrs. Tweedy says, "You want a demonstration? Go get me a chicken." Mr. Tweedy knows just the one and goes and grabs Ginger. The other hens inform Rocky of this, and he uses a zip line to go over into the barn to try to save Ginger. Rocky's rescue attempt goes interestingly as they both get knocked into the machine and knock all around it, destroying most of it. Ginger actually ends up rescuing Rocky, getting him out of the machine just before he's burned alive, and due to the damage they cause, the machine pretty much implodes in on itself. Mrs. Tweedy is obviously furious at the machine being broken and instructs Mr. Tweedy to fix it, although this has at least bought the chickens a couple days. Rocky and Ginger then return to the farm, and Rocky goes back to the rooster hut where Fowler presents him with a medal for bravery. Rocky doesn't seem to feel very brave though, in fact he seems pretty nervous. This is only amplified as Ginger tells him that since his wing is healed now, he can teach them to fly tomorrow. Everyone's all ready for the big flying demonstration, and Ginger goes to collect Rocky, who is gone. On his bed he left two things, the medal and the bottom half of his poster. And the bottom half of his poster reveals that the only reason Rocky was able to fly is because he was shot out of a cannon. It's also revealed Rocky tunneled under the fence and has escaped the chicken farm. Well, now morale is at an all-time low, and everybody, except for Ginger, start a huge brawl with each other. Ginger then picks up Fowler's medal, which says RAF on it, and she asks Fowler what that is, and he says why it's the Royal Air Force. He then shows them old diagrams that he had of a plane, and Ginger realizes that's it. They're gonna build a plane. They get to work building the plane, taking stuff from the farm, and getting tools from the rats, being able to pay them in eggs now since they don't need them anymore. Days go by simultaneously with the chickens building the plane while Mr. Tweedy attempts to repair the pie machine. Meanwhile, Rocky has procured a tricycle and a radio somehow and is on the road until he sees a sign for Mrs. Tweedy's chicken pies and starts to feel really guilty. Later that night, Mr. Tweedy finally fixes the machine, and Mrs. Tweedy instructs him to bring over all the chickens. The chickens' plane isn't quite ready, but they gotta go now. Unfortunately for them, Mr. Tweedy catches them in the act. Well, only one thing for it then, time to jump him. They subdue and hog-tie Mr. Tweedy and get the plane all ready to go. Well, time for Fowler to fly it. Only one problem, he's never flown before. He was a mascot for the Royal Air Force, they didn't actually let him fly a plane. Ginger tells him though that he's got no choice, he's got to earn his medal, and that's all the determination that he needed. The plane begins to go, and just before they can get up the ramp, Mr. Tweedy gets free and knocks the ramp over. The plane then turns around, which hits him in the head, knocking him out again. Ginger gets out of the plane to fix the ramp, but Mrs. Tweedy is there, and she's got an axe. Ginger is trapped under the ramp, but before Mrs. Tweedy can kill her, Rocky and his tricycle come out of nowhere, flying over the fence and knocking Mrs. Tweedy out. Rocky and Ginger then get the ramp up, which allows the plane to take off. Luckily for them, the plane also got tied up in some lights, which they use to hang on to and get up onto the plane. It appears everything's home free, however, but not exactly. They're not the only ones who grabbed the lights. Mrs. Tweedy did as well, and she's hanging on. Ginger decides to go out onto the lights herself and try to cut them before Mrs. Tweedy can get up. In order to slow Mrs. Tweedy down, the rats and Rocky launch eggs at her, which inadvertently causes Ginger to drop her scissors. Mrs. Tweedy then takes a swipe at Ginger with her axe, which appears to cut her head off. Only it didn't, she missed, and she got the wire instead, which Ginger lets go of, sending Mrs. Tweedy tumbling all the way down into her own chicken farm. Not only that, but she lands in the pie machine, which explodes and seems to kill her. Oh, actually no, she's not dead, but it did destroy the whole barn, but then the barn door falls on top of her, which probably kills her. Also, if you look at this wide angle, I'm not sure if the door just fell or if Mr. Tweedy pushed it on top of her, but it kind of looks like he might have pushed it on top of her. Sometime later, the chickens have a new home on an island that they call Paradise. There's chicks now, and Rocky and Ginger have entered a relationship. The rats are there too, and the film ends with them discussing starting their own chicken farm, but they're not sure if they need the chicken or the egg to get it going. So I'm going to start this on slightly a negative note, which might be a surprise because I really don't have anything at all negative to say about this film. It's more just about Mel Gibson. I gotta say, it is a damn shame that he is such a horrible, awful person. Because he is a tremendous actor. Like, seriously. He was fantastic in his role, and the movie probably would have been worse with anybody else in it, which just makes it so much a damn shame. Why do you have to be such a weirdo, Mel Gibson? Just why? Mel Gibson obviously did not return to voice Rocky in the sequel. Instead, he was voiced by Zachary Levi, so we'll see how that goes. But again, aside from that, I really don't have anything negative to say about this film. This is arguably the greatest stop-motion animation film of all time. Would I put it as my favorite? Probably not. I would probably go with A Nightmare Before Christmas, if I'm being perfectly honest, but this would be definitely in my top 3, I think. One box is checked for me, which I think was very important, was the runtime. It was only 84 minutes. For a film like this, that's all it needed to be. Some people, I swear, the most annoying thing I see in films nowadays is just stretching. Stretching films to runtimes that they really don't need to be. And not just nowadays, it's always happened. But like, I've talked about this because I've done a lot of slasher films on the channel. Slasher films, 90 minutes max. If you are making a 2-hour plus slasher film, then I am probably out, brother. Because it's a slasher film, there's not much to think about. People die, gore, ending, maybe everyone dies, maybe people are saved. I don't know, maybe you set up for a sequel and you make 15 more, that's usually how the slasher genre works. But they do not need to be 2 hours plus. 90 minutes is fine. And for a film like this, that is fine as well. Could they have added a little bit more to this? Maybe, but they really didn't need to. It's a movie about chickens escaping. You don't need to make a 2.5-hour movie about chickens escaping. 80 minutes is enough. As I previously implied, I have not seen the sequel yet. It got good reviews, but I am a little nervous going into it, I'm not gonna lie, just because, you know, making a sequel in general is hard. Making a sequel to a movie that came out 23 years before is even harder. In conclusion for today, however, everything about this movie is great. The voice acting is great, the animation is great, the plot is fun. Is it kid-friendly? Not necessarily, to be honest. I'd say it's more like preteens to teens, to be honest. I don't think I would actually consider this a kid's movie. There's little bit of violence in it and some murder, you know, so I don't think I would recommend this to small children. I mean, it's up to you, you're the parent if you're watching this, but it's more of a preteen teen movie, I'd say. Regardless of what age they watch it at, however, this movie is a must-see for people at some point in their life. But that is it for me today and my look back at Chicken Run. Thank you still for using your points on this. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave it a like. If you didn't like it, don't. If you want to follow any of my social media links are all in the video description, as well as names on my Patreon. Thank you to my Patreon for supporting me and my channels. I appreciate you guys. With all that being said, though, my name is Noah Taft. This has been my look back at Chicken Run, released in the year 2000, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.